It's possible that the US regulatory landscape for cryptocurrencies has suddenly changed drastically. Though we are beginning to see some very alarming new indicators around Ethereum and the SEC, I have never been more sure that Ripple and XRP will move past the SEC and become the dominant cryptocurrency combo in the United States. I want to show you something that happened today that, in my opinion, gives rise to grave doubts about the SEC targeting Ethereum and classifying it as a security. Folks, for the past few years, I have been arguing that the SEC will never pursue Ethereum. Here's what made me decide to change my viewpoint today. This is so disturbing that you must watch it. To begin this video, I would like to briefly explain to you all why I am no longer as concerned about the SEC's lawsuit against Ripple. I have been stating for some time now, gentlemen, that the SEC has already lost its lawsuit against Ripple. XRP is not a security, and the SEC and Ripple are currently merely attempting to determine how harshly Ripple will penalize itself. The odd thing is that the SEC has been producing worse and poorer papers throughout the Ripple SEC case, and yesterday's offering may have been their weakest to date. The SEC is currently attempting to go before the court and argue that Ripple needs to pay a $2 billion fine on its $700 million in XRP sales. If you recall, the majority of Ripple's sales of XRP were not securities, even though XRP itself wasn't a security. However, the court determined that some of Ripple's sales to institutions qualified as securities, and at this point, Ripple and the SEC are attempting to determine how much of a punishment Ripple should pay for those $700 million in sales. Now, the SEC told the court that Ripple ought to be required to reimburse us for $2 billion. Now, I find it to be totally ludicrous, given that the SEC only has jurisdiction over the United States, and that a significant amount of Ripple's $700 million in sales are probably from outside the country. Thus, in all likelihood, the SEC is only going to get a portion of the $700 million that Ripple sold to institutions, even if they are requesting $2 billion. You can certainly see that the SEC's request is a little ridiculous right away, but it gets worse when you see what they really put into the case. Allow me to present the evidence the SEC believes would bolster their claim of a $2 billion fine for sales under $700 million. We have discussed endlessly how the SEC has really failed to provide any evidence in this case. This particular tweet, which comes from the XRP community and isn't particularly critical of XRP or Ripple, is an example of the evidence that the SEC is presenting. Check out the tweet they used as presentee. It's time to oust Gary Gensler and take Warren Davidson out of charge of the SEC. The SEC has used tweets from current legislators claiming that the SEC is totally out of line as evidence in their case. The SEC is presenting tweets from a lawmaker in office that claim the agency is not following the law faithfully when it comes to cryptocurrency. There is no evidence that I could find to support my claims. How in the heck did the SEC include this? It is utterly startling. In your situation, you would never want these kinds of things. Why would you want the judge to know that? Well, it's not just the retail establishment that is against you. Ripple is not the only one who opposes you. The US government is the one working against you. This clearly demonstrates how out of line the SEC is, and the court sees this kind of evidence as they attempt to support their position. I've said this a lot on the channel, guys. I think there's a severe skill shortage in the SEC. The SEC, in my opinion, has failed as an agency because, in addition to clearly losing this case, presenting such evidence indicates that you are no longer competent. Guys, when I saw this, I was in shock. After witnessing this, I felt compelled to bring it to your attention because the majority of the SEC's attorneys had just given up. Right now, they're just trying to do something by tossing things ahead, but the issue is that they have no direction. They don't have a plan for what they want to accomplish. It appears as though Gary Gensler is telling these underprivileged SEC attorneys, look, we don't have any evidence. Keep pushing this case forward. All we'll do is gather a collection of haphazard tweets and include them in the case. Guys, this is shockingly real. Though it's unbelievable that this is still being considered seriously, this assures me that Ripple will have no problems in the future. Additionally, Jeremy Hogan-Wright made a comment. He is stating that he wouldn't be shocked if the SEC received exactly zero money from Ripple based on their case and briefing. For my part, though, I don't think Ripple will give the SEC anything. I think Ripple will pay a fee, perhaps somewhere in the range of $200 million and $50 million, but the key thing to remember about that is that it will just be a modest charge for Ripple. Ripple's balance sheet shows billions of dollars. Ripple and XRP appear to have little remaining in the United States with the SEC, as they can afford a minor fine if imposed, and crucially, XRP's status as a non-security allows them to continue their business. The SEC, after all, is toothless right now. In their lawsuit, they are presenting tweets that demonstrate how absurd their first claims were. I simply don't see Ripple and XRP running into problems with the SEC in the future. Having stated all of that, let me explain why I think the SEC's opposition to Ethereum is becoming a major problem. It appeared for a moment that Ethereum wasn't a security, correct? As you may remember, the SEC released a statement with Bill Hinman stating that Ethereum is not a security, and the majority of the market jumped on this. Alright, so the SEC declared that Ethereum is not a security. Then Gary Gensler took over at the SEC and everyone who had claimed that vanished. You do realize that Gary Gensler hasn't ever stated that Ethereum isn't a security since taking over? Indeed, he has hinted at the exact opposite. I didn't think the SEC was going to retract these claims for long, didn't I? At first, I thought it would be a pointless exercise, but it's starting to reveal some extremely alarming truths. The first, and most likely, is Prometheum. Prometheum is an exchange that specializes in listing stocks and has made repeated claims that it is in collaboration with the SEC to list Ethereum. This sounds to me like the SEC trying to backdoor Ethereum by calling it a security. What other possibility is there? Another worrying development is that the CFTC has been adamantly and repeatedly stating that Ethereum is not a security. You may be asking why this matters to you. Why should I care whether the SEC labels Ethereum a security? In the ongoing regulatory turf war between the SEC and the CFTC took yet another significant action today in an attempt to offset the SEC. The CFTC clearly refers to Ethereum as a digital commodity in a lawsuit against KuCoin. Now, if the CFTC didn't know that the SEC was about to make an attempt to identify Ethereum as a security, I doubt they would be taking this action. I believe the CFTC is aware that the SEC and Gary Gensler are preparing to launch an attack on Ethereum. And folks, the SEC motion may already be in effect. Eleanor Tarrant has informed us that the SEC has already issued subpoenas to some developers and applications related to the Ethereum Foundation. It appears that the SEC is already compiling all of the information they believe they will require to begin an Ethereum inquiry. This is the section that has significantly shifted my perspective and is, in my view, the most critical. It is not Ethereum, the token, that is the subject of this study. It's against staking, which is, in my opinion, the only avenue by which the SEC may pursue this lawsuit. Currently, the SEC has declared that Ethereum sales are not securities. The SEC is unwilling to retract that assertion. It would not look good. However, they can state outright that staking is security. Ethereum is now a security as a result. This would be a major problem for Ethereum, as staking does appear to constitute security, in my view. In order to make a profit, you are giving someone your token. It seems like they're giving you something back for their work. This is preferable to a token serving as the only form of security. At minimum, there is a possibility of incorporating this into securities law. Therefore, the SEC's argument that staking is a security may have some merit. We also know that the SEC has settled charges that made staking appear like a security in a number of cases against exchanges. Gentlemen, this could be a serious issue for projects that rely on staking as their consensus method. This might pose a serious issue for Ethereum, in my opinion. And this might be the SEC's last-ditch attempt to get past its defeats against XRP and Ripple and attempt to seize control over a sizable chunk of the market by pursuing staking. Now, folks, based on this back and forth between the SEC and the CFTC, as well as the SEC directly reaching out to people associated with the Ethereum Foundation in this entire Prometheum situation, I believe that the SEC will target Ethereum and staking as its next move. Folks, I own Ethereum if this occurs, and I'm not encouraging it in the slightest. That's not what I want to happen. In my opinion, it would set the stage for XRP and Ripple to become the cornerstones of this new financial system. If Ethereum and all other staking tokens find themselves embroiled in a legal battle over whether or not staking is a security, the case Ripple has already won will approve consensus methods that don't use staking like the XRP ledger. Folks, I do not want regulatory arbitrage to benefit the XRP ledger. The SEC is holding up all these other chains, so I don't want the XRP ledger to prevail. However, I'm just making the point that in terms of Ripple and XRP, things have never looked better, and in terms of staking cryptocurrency, things are beginning to seem very hazy. Guys, this is something we will need to watch closely. However, we are aware that Ripple has never ceased developing in the background. Guys, what we discovered is that Ripple never stopped developing in the background. According to the SEC's most recent filing, Ripple has signed over 80 additional contracts involving the actual distribution of XRP since the start of the SEC action, and a considerable number more since the case concluded. Guys, right now Ripple is really kicking ass. It appears as though something is going to hold back the entire industry. Let's cross our fingers for it to succeed. but for XRP and Ripple, things have never looked better.